Hello and welcome to Cryptid by Region, Scotland. Today we are continuing our worldwide journey on the hunt for some of the strangest cryptids and more than likely widely unknown to those outside the area. Last month we took a look at Ireland, so I figured why not stay in the UK and venture into the opposite side of that coin. Over the years, many of my viewers expressed their interest in knowing more about the creatures found in this country. And being my wife is part Scottish, which she requested this topic also, all of this added up to the video you are watching today. So, without dragging this intro out, get your boarding passes ready since we are taking this cryptid family trip to the air via first class. Scotland has a very long and in-depth history, and while I think it is interesting to talk about, I can't go into everything here. As such, I'll give a very brief overview of the more important parts. In its history, Scotland has records of people living in the area as far back as 130,000 BC. Many of these people were considered highly mobile and utilized boats frequently. Later in history, it is written that at least 18 distinct tribes of people were found in the area. In 43 AD, the Romans began invading Britain, and in 84, at the Battle of Mons Graupius, Roman general Gnaeus Julius Agricola defeated the northern tribes and set up forts and towers along the Gask Ridge. This action is credited for officially separating Scotland into the Highland and Lowlands. Eventually, Rome would try to take over the southern part of Scotland, but they failed many times to do this. The Celtic-speaking people known as the Picts would emerge and become a dominant force against the Roman Empire. England would then take interest in the area, and from this point there is a lot of history of crowns changing hands. This would, of course, include the famed William Wallace and Andrew de Moray, who were successful for a time in resisting the English armies. Wallace would become known as the guardian of the realm, but it should go without saying that we all know how well this worked out for him in the end. What would follow would be a few treaties signed that recognized Scotland as being independent, but then this would lead to those documents being refuted and wars for independence would resume many times. Anytime there was a change in power, a treaty would be signed, but after that ruler died, a war would begin. Jumping ahead, on January 6, 1707, the Scottish Parliament adopted the Treaty of Union, which in turn joined Scotland and England under the name of Great Britain. A movement known as Jacobitism rose up against the Union, and while some battles were successful, the whole movement eventually ended by 1807, with very little being changed. The flag of Scotland is very simple in design, and it was first utilized in 1512. As such, it is actually considered the oldest saltire design in Europe. The saltire is a French word that basically means a diagonal cross. The flag's meaning is quite simple. It represents Scotland's patron saint, St. Andrew's Cross. He is commonly considered the man responsible for converting Scotland to Christianity. The story goes that he was ordered to be crucified by the Roman governor Aegeus on November 30th, 60 AD. However, rather than being hung from a cross, Andrew requested a version called a creux de cassata, an X shape, since he felt unworthy to die the same way his savior did. As such, Scotland depicts this act on the flag with the white X representing the cross, and the blue shows the color of his robes. Okay, let's get into the cryptids. As I mentioned in my video on Ireland, Scotland certainly doesn't have a lack of cryptids. You may be shocked to discover that just about every type of cryptid you could think about is found in this country. I think it would be best if, being the most famous cryptid probably in the world is Nessie, we probably should look at water creatures. While Nessie is famous, did you know that it isn't alone? Just about every loch is said to have some type of monster residing in the water. The difference is that it seems stories about the beasts are not as openly talked about as the ones from Loch Ness. At Loch Moura in West Inverness, a similar looking plesiosaur-style creature is said to make the waters its home. This creature is known as Morag, and reports of the being have been around since 1887 up until recent times. Many of these sightings have multiple people seeing it at the same time. One report states that people near Brahana Point noticed some children pointing excitedly at something across the water. When they looked over, there was a massive creature, which was described as being the size of an adult Indian elephant, laying on the bank. As they watched it, it lurched forward and sunk into the water with a large splash. In 1948, 9 people were out on a boat when they claimed to have seen a 20-foot-long serpentine-like creature swimming under the water. Then, on August 16, 1969, 2 fishermen named Duncan MacDonald and William Simpson were in their boat when they decided to return to shore. As they traveled on the water, they heard an extremely large splash behind them. Duncan immediately turned the boat around and saw a massive creature swimming towards them at a speed that was estimated to be around 20 to 30 miles an hour. Moments later, this being slammed into the craft. Duncan assumed the impact was on accident, but for fear of what this creature could do, he struck it with an oar. William grabbed a rifle and fired at the beast as well. Neither hit seemed to affect the being, but it did slowly swim away and sink below the water. The men claimed that it was 25 to 30 feet long. It had rough, dirty brown skin, 3 humps that stood 18 inches above the water, and it had a long snake-like neck with a 1-foot-wide head at the end of it. On July 14, 1970, the Loch Ness Investigation Bureau were looking into Loch Mora when a biologist on the team named Neil Bass said that he spotted the black humps of a massive creature in the water. On April 3, 1971, a lifelong resident living near the loch named Ewan Gillies saw the creature in the water half a mile away from where he stood. It had 2 to 3 humps, a long neck that was 3 to 4 feet long. Its skin was pitch black, and it was said to be about 30 feet in length. There were photos taken in 1977 by a woman named Miss M. Lindsay, which she claims is the creature. There have also been sightings in the 80s and late 90s as well. Another creature similar to this is the one known as Lizzie from Loch Lochy. This creature has been reported since 1929 up until 1997. It was first spotted by 2 gamekeepers who originally thought it was simply a log floating in the water. One of the men grabbed a telescope to get a better look and quickly realized it wasn't a tree, but a living creature. The pair watched it swim for about a mile before it finally submerged and never resurfaced. It was then seen a year later by a resident that lived by the water. In 1960, a man named Eric Robinson and his family were staying near Glen Fenteg when they noticed an odd standing wave in the center of the calm water. When they looked through binoculars, they realized this wave was actually a large black creature swimming under the water. They described it as being around 30 to 40 feet long, and as they watched it, apparently it rolled over. It was at this moment that they saw it had flippers, and the lower half of the creature was a light gray. A similar event happened in 1975, when Miss Margaret Sargent and her husband saw a similar-looking wave that turned out to be a massive creature. Then on September 1996, the staff and guests of the Corridor Lodge Hotel saw a dark-colored creature with 3 humps swimming around in circles. One of the guests, an Aberdeen University psychology student named Catriona Allen, watched the creature through binoculars and stated it certainly wasn't a seal, otter, porpoise, or dolphin. There were a few other sightings, but an interesting encounter occurred on July of 1997. The official Loch Ness Monster Fan Club visited the water with cryptozoologist Cameron Turner. Using sonar, they traveled to the middle of the loch, and to their surprise, they saw something that was 60 to 20 feet long swimming in the water at a depth of 160 feet. Moments later, the object dove down to 200 feet, but then it vanished. Cameron returned to this site in September of that same year, and this time they hit something at 270 feet down. The most interesting result of this study was that at one point the sonar reached the depth of over 2,000 feet, which indicated that the loch actually had underwater tunnels in it. This has led many to wonder if these creatures that are just about in every loch aren't actually the same one and are traversing these caverns, which might be connected. Let us move on to a more terrestrial type of being, and that oddly enough would be alien big cats. Starting off, there is a cat known as the Galloway puma. This massive feline is completely black in color, and sightings of it started in 1990 up until recently. This cat has been seen mostly in the southern part of Scotland. The first sighting came from 2 Canadian tourists who were near the Kirroch Tree area in Galloway Forest, and they claimed it was a cougar. Residents, farmers, and even forestry commission officers started to see this creature as well near the Mechars area. In June of 2001, a woman was walking her dog by a golf course near Galloway Park when a large black cat jumped in the middle of the path in front of them. She stated that it was larger than a German Shepherd, which is known as an Alsatian in the UK, and the creature ran away when her dog started to bark at it. Then in December of 2012, a couple named Alan and Mandy Dalton were traveling home on Girvan Road on their way to Glasgow. It was around 3:30 p.m. when Mandy pointed at something black lying on the side of the road. The couple thought it was a large black dog at first, so they put the car in reverse to get a better look at it. To their shock, it wasn't a dog, but a giant cat the size of a Labrador, and it had yellow eyes and a long tail. Before they could get a picture, it ran off quickly into the forest. Not to be outdone, but the creature known as the Beast of Buchan has been reported in the Aberdeenshire area since the 1930s. This also is a large black cat that is described as being larger than a Labrador, but it has a bushy head and tail. This cat has been known to kill sheep, and in 2002, it actually attacked a woman as she was leaving her stable. Luckily, a friend of hers saw the attack and managed to drive the cat away. It is said to be commonly sighted along the footpath known as Formartine and Buchan Way. Interestingly, there is a cat that was at one time considered a cryptid, but has since been proven to exist, which is known as the Kellis cat. This is an important story for skeptics, since sightings were often written off or said to be simply a hoax. That is, until a gamekeeper known as Ronnie Douglas actually killed one in 1984. Its body was preserved, but not before it was determined to be a feline hybrid. Speaking previously of dogs, I would like to mention the one known as the Cooshie. While it is said to be a ghost dog, descriptions seem to indicate a real creature. It is said to be the size of a small cow, its paws are the size of a human hand, its shaggy coat is a dark green color, and its eyes are large and glow a fiery red color. It is said to live and roam the wild moors of the highlands. It lives in rocky caves, and in some tellings it serves the Fey folk. Even though it is massive, it is said to be very silent when it is on the hunt. Although, on occasion, it will let out 3 howls that can be heard for miles. The thought is that if you actually hear the 3rd howl, it means that a person will die soon after. I would normally end this video here, since it is hitting my usual time limit, but I have a few other cryptids on my list that I simply need to tell you about. The first of which is known as the Wolver. This being is found in the Shetland Islands and is by all accounts a breed of dogman. These creatures were said to be covered in short brown hair, had a wolf head, never were human, and couldn't transform. They seemed to be civilized, but lived in caves in the hills. Stories claim that they enjoy fishing and would frequently leave some of their catch for the local townsfolk. While most cryptids have a scary or frightening element to them, these beings were said to be nice and wouldn't attack unless provoked. Moving on, we need to talk about a being known as the Levelin, and I am honestly very confused if these were known to be real. They basically are a type of rodent that live near the water in deep pools and rivers. While small, they were known to be poisonous. This toxin was so strong that it could kill a cow from a great distance. With this description, even though it isn't directly stated, I am thinking that they are indicating that it could spit its poison. What makes this curious is that writings claim these creatures were common in the Scottish county of Caithness, and the locals would preserve the skins of these creatures as a way to cure their sick animals. I think I saved the best for last, since Scotland has a cryptid that by all descriptions is their very own Groot. Okay, that may be a little far-reaching, but it is still an interesting creature. This being is known as the Ghillie Dhu, and it technically is a spirit that protects nature. It is said to have long black hair, lives in birch trees, and covers its body in leaves and moss. It is said to be nocturnal and has a diet of nuts and berries. By all accounts, it is friendly towards children and has even been known to help them find their way home if they become lost in the forest. On the reverse of this, they normally have a hatred towards adults, and if they see one, it doesn't end well. In some versions, they will wrap their arms around a human and squeeze them to death, whereas in others, they will entrap them forever in their limb arms. Although one variation claims that they will crush the body and use it for fertilizer for the forest. As usual, I could not cover every cryptid there was in Scotland, especially in the time frame of a single video, so I will include as many as I can here as an honorable mention. You may be shocked to hear that this country actually does have Bigfoot sightings. While maybe not as prominent as the US, they do occur, and a few of note are the Wildman or the Woodwose. While not technically a cryptid, there are said to be different types of vampires here as well. I mentioned a few water creatures, but there are too many to include with in-depth information. Apparently, there is a giant eel that is the size of a horse in Loch Awe. Loch Marie is said to have a similar creature known as the Muck Shilika. It was seen so many times that in 1850 there was even an attempt to drain the loch in order to kill the creature. There is a 3-humped, 13-foot-long creature with a serpent-like head known as a yachi. Reports of this creature vary, but it seems to almost be described as a slimy humanoid akin to a mermaid. It was first seen near Windermere in 1873, and it was said to even have been photographed twice in 1973 by a scientific group who were searching for the creature. I can't find those photos though. Another creature that I've talked about in previous videos is the Kelpie, which is a horse that lives in the water, and its skin becomes sticky if a human touches it. Of course, this would allow the horse to drown the person and then eat them. This would also include the other famous horse I have spoken about, which is the Yahusha. I can't leave the horse topics without mentioning the Nuckelavee, the being that is a skinned horse and rider combined. Again, this is a topic I have mentioned at great lengths about in a previous video. I will provide a link to that video about the strange horse cryptids in the description below. I should note that the Selkies, which is a mermaid that resembles a seal and can shed their skin to appear human, is found in Scotland as well. So I hope you enjoyed this video and I made Scotland proud. I understand that the history section was overly simplified and I missed a lot of important things, but I had to make cuts somewhere. Also, sorry for any mispronunciations. I tried to get them all, but sometimes they were hard to find. It is at this point that I wanted to say that your participation for voting for our next Cryptid by State video has been amazing. I would also like to note that I can officially say that the next video will be West Virginia. Louisiana almost took the top spot, but West Virginia literally won by a single vote. So remember to keep putting those votes in the comments section, especially since we have seen the last 2 states win by only 1. If you haven't yet done so, do please consider subscribing to my channel for more content like this. Also, it would be greatly appreciated if you share my videos with someone you know who may enjoy this type of genre. With that, be safe, and I'll see you in the next one. Later.